I've worked in cybersecurity for over 30 years. There's no such thing as 100% security. Offense is boring. You can always break in. Recognize and fully accept that you're at risk. Don't trust people. Don't trust email. Don't trust phone calls.
Before we begin, I would like you to introduce yourself to our viewers.
I'm Eric Cole, a cybersecurity professional. I've worked in cybersecurity for over 30 years, and I believe that my purpose and reason for being on this planet is to secure cyberspace. There's a lot of problems and issues out there. So I'm on a mission to make cyberspace a safe place to live, work, and raise a family. I started my career as a professional hacker at the CIA. So I spent over 5 years looking at vulnerabilities, exposures, and breaking into systems. And after doing that for 5 years, I learned two things. One, offense is easy. Offense is boring. You can always break in. So I switched to defense because I realized with defense, you're never 100% secure. So it always gives you new challenges. And the second thing I realized working for the government is I don't like working for other people. I really have an entrepreneurial spirit. So I've then gone, after I left the CIA, I started a company called TSGI, the Cytex Group, Inc. And we built that up and we sold that to Lockheed Martin, where I was then the chief scientist responsible for all cybersecurity issues, all breaches across all of Lockheed Martin. I was then recruited by Dave DeWalt, who is the CEO of McAfee. And I worked at McAfee to redesign their entire product line, basically align and adapt with the new challenges, new problems, and with what customers were looking for. We then sold that company to Intel. I then worked at SANS, where I built out their top selling courses from Security Essentials, the CISSP to Enterprise Defender, ended up leaving that. And now I'm running my own company, Secure Anchor, where I help executives, I train CISOs, we perform security assessments, and really help give organizations visibility and perspective. Because what I found is cybersecurity isn't near as hard as everyone makes it out to be. It's just focusing in on the right areas. I also love sharing knowledge, so I give a lot of videos, podcasts, and I've also recently published my 7th book, Cyber Crisis: How to Protect Your Business from Real Threats in the Cyber World.
Cyberspace cannot be defended if you cannot secure the physical space. And in the last 2 years, we have a challenge of COVID. A lot of workers for different companies, even for government, work remotely. What kind of exposure does it give to the entire cyberspace when people work remotely? And how can consumers calling a customer service and that customer service sitting in their house be secure that their credit cards cannot be stolen? What do companies do to protect the environments of people's houses, right where their employees are?
Pandemic and the onslaught of working from home, it greatly increased the risk because of the increased visibility. If you looked at a normal organization that had 500 employees, those 500 employees, when they came in the office, were behind firewalls, IDSs, and filtering. So from an internet standpoint, a visibility standpoint from an attacker, there was one entity. It was the one building, the one company. You did not have access to those 500 employees. With COVID, essentially what companies did is they opened up 500 new offices, because now all 500 employees, because they're connected to the internet and they're accessing the internet to get access to their data, information, and others, you now have a huge exposure point, because now you have 500 targets visible from the internet instead of one. And then to add to that, most of these home companies are using older systems. All of a sudden, BYOD, bring your own device, that we learned 7 years ago was a bad idea, now started being done. We just don't call it BYOD. So you have older systems, outdated technology, and no firewalls, no IDSs. So it's really created a big problem for organizations. And the hard part is most companies were focused on survivability. When COVID hit, literally it happened overnight. People went home. And companies said, okay, pandemic shut everything down. Nobody was allowed back in the office. So at that point, it was like, do whatever is necessary to survive. It doesn't matter what the risks are. It doesn't matter what the exposures are. I mean, take your kid's computer, your 12-year-old that's been doing TikToks, clicks on everything and has 300 viruses. Use that computer. It's good because it's all about the survivability. And now what's happening is we're stepping back saying, we have huge security risks. We have huge exposures that are out there. So to me, what needs to be done, and it's a fairly simple solution, is we need to supply thin clients to all of our employees. A thin client, basically, it doesn't have a hard drive, so we're not storing local data. So now you're connected to the internet, but there's no exposure because all the data is in the cloud, in the data center is properly protected. And now you get a brand new operating system every day. So even if your system does get infected, it's infected for hours and not years. So that is the preferred solution. If you can't do that, the quicker, shorter term solution is use two devices. The two most dangerous applications on planet Earth. It's not TikTok. It's not Angry Birds. It is web browsers and email clients. Those are the source of most evil. So what I do, what my team does, everyone I talk to, is I have a Windows computer that I use for doing my work. I have Word, PowerPoint, that's what I do my work on. But then I have an iPad that I use only for surfing the web and checking email. Now, a couple factors. One, most of the malware that's out there today is written for Windows. It's not because Windows is more vulnerable. It's because Windows has a 90% install base. You have a much higher target. So by using a non-Windows simple tablet like an iPad, most of the malware doesn't work. Then, because the only thing I'm doing on my iPad is email and browsing, if I do get infected, if I do make a mistake, there's no critical data. I re-image my iPad, which we know takes 30 minutes, and I'm back to running again. So really the idea in cybersecurity is remove, isolate, or eliminate the risk, either by using a thin client or by using two different computer systems.
Thank you. Since the pandemic hit, do you see more cyber crimes that become popular? What do you see?
Since the pandemic, what I've seen, and I don't think it has anything to do with, the first one has nothing to do with the pandemic. The second trend absolutely does. But the first trend is the commercialization of cybercrime, where instead of it being like nation states or governments trying to do espionage or steal information or things like that, companies and entities have realized you can make big bucks in cybercrime. So we have seen companies being formed that focus solely on ransomware or solely on stealing information or solely going after that data. So that trend of commercialization of cybercrime focused mainly on financial gain and benefit via ransom and extortion, I think would have happened regardless of whether the pandemic occurred or not, because that was just the trend that was happening. However, where you have so many more people at home and now everyone is reliant on technology, because nobody wants to go to banks. So everybody is doing online banking. Everyone is doing online mortgage applications. Everyone is doing, so everything is being done with computers. The big trend we've seen from that is a shift from cyber attacks going after large companies to going after individuals. If I'm going after a large company and I want to steal millions of dollars, it's hard. They have firewalls, they have technology, they have monitoring, they have staff, they have a security operations center. It can be done, but it's going to take 10 to 12 months and it's going to take a long time and energy to get in. But if I'm going after an individual, they don't have a security operations center. They don't have a team. They don't have anyone else. Now, I'm not stealing $1 million. I'm stealing $100. So I'm going to target an individual and steal anywhere from $10 to $100. In some cases, it doesn't even get noticed. But if I do that from 10,000 people, I steal $100. I've just made multiple millions of dollars. So that's the big shift, that now everyone is so reliant on technology. Passwords are, once again, it shocks me in the year 2022 that we would still be telling people, don't use Fluffy, the name of your dog, as your password. But you would be shocked of how many people are still doing that and using easy to guess passwords. So we're seeing the targeting of individuals increase exponentially. But what I always tell folks is every technology, whether it's e-commerce, online banking, credit cards, the good news is all of them have security built in. The bad news is it's not turned on by default because they don't recognize that consumers are willing to bear the burden. But two-factor authentication, it's simple, it's easy, it's not perfect, but it's so much better than passwords that I just urge everybody, turn on two-factor authentication. It's one of the quickest, easiest way to increase your security and protect your data.
What shall consumers do? How do we protect our future financial stability, not to expose ourselves to risks associated with stolen identity?
The first one is give up technology and become Amish, right? Live on horse and buggies, go off the grid, right? So I joke, but I honestly think that's going to become more common than we sort of like to admit. So that was sort of joke. My second one is also a little humorous, is do my golden rules of security. My golden rules of security is drink and pray, and not necessarily in that order. I usually like to pray before I drink. So those would be first two, but getting a little more reasonable and practical, the advice I would give is recognize and fully accept that you're at risk. You're not going to be 100% safe and secure. So recognize that risk and make educated decisions of, is the risk worth it? Limit or control where you put your information. And probably the best advice I can give to consumers, develop a very healthy dose of paranoia. Don't trust email. Don't trust phone calls. The amount of scam and fraudulent activity that's occurring out there is off the charts. So if you're getting emails with attachments and embedded links, don't click on them, don't open them. My personal thing is I do not answer the phone unless it's caller ID of somebody I know. I do not do unsolicited. Do not answer, let them leave a voicemail, and then you go back to your legitimate bank or entity and call them. But just recognize that cybercrime is on the rise. You're a target, and be paranoid. Don't trust people, don't trust email, don't trust phone calls. Limit who you give your information to, and that's going to go a long way to limit your exposure and protect yourself.
Shall cybersecurity be taught in high school?
Yes, 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 and yes. And to me, it's simple. If you're giving somebody a pen and paper, you better teach them how to write. If you're giving somebody a book, you better teach them how to read. Well, why are we giving them these devices and not teaching them how to use them, how to protect them, how to secure them? To me, it's the biggest threat out there. When my kids were in kindergarten and first grade, they were taught about safety. They were like, don't take candy from strangers, right? If somebody comes up, stranger danger, look both ways before crossing the street. Yet we then give them cell phones and iPads and other stuff, and we give them zero security training. Kids are brilliant, but they're trustworthy and they're naive. So if we don't teach them about cybersecurity and protection and basic mechanisms, they think that everyone they talk to is legitimate. They think everyone to talk to is valid, when in reality, it's not. And I'll tell you, when I go into high schools, I always love when I get text messages from both students and parents going, Eric, I used to post pictures and this and that and do all this stuff online. And after you gave me a reality check, I don't do that anymore because the risk's not worth it. And then what always bothers me is they go, Eric, why didn't anybody tell me this? Why didn't my parents or teachers teach me about this? So to me, cybersecurity is a fundamental life skill, just like home ed, cooking, and anything else. And the fact that we're not teaching it or covering it in school is one of the biggest disservices we're doing to our children.
Eric, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Do you have anything to add to our viewers? Any message you want to send to people that will see this interview?
The only message I would send to the viewers is always remember, no matter who you are, what you do, or how much money or how little money you have in a bank account, you are a target, and cybersecurity is your responsibility.
Thank you. Have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye.